So what we are going to talk about is strategize and how to approach your growing analytics needs, right? Like we just talked about it. In terms of introduction, what we do at Transform3 and what I'm trying to do through this podcast is help you all to understand the basic and the advanced needs while you are working as a product manager, or if you are at a CXO level and are trying to solve a lot of issues. So I bring in experts who try to solve these challenges by working on case studies. So it's not those boring kind of sessions where I just go and impart some kind of a thought process. But what we'll do is we'll pick up real world example and break it down step by step to actually solve the problem at the end of the day. So that's what Transform3 is all about. That's what this podcast is all about. Apart from that, I'm currently heading a product at one of the credit underwriting analytics company. And again, the kind of learning that I'm having currently and in my previous startups have been immense. So let's start with the today's topic. Now, the first thing, right? When to start thinking about analytics and which tools to select. So which tool to select and when to start, they depend on a couple of things, right? So first of all, you need to understand that, okay, how many active users did we have this month? What are overall retention rates? What are our top sources of referral signups, right? These are some typical questions which we might have to solve. These are some typical questions which we might have in front of us and we would like to solve initially. And now, at the end of the day, the timing of choosing these tools and depending on the questions it's coming in your head day in and day out, that's how you will select the tool. So the timing of choosing the tool makes everything great. So that's very significant, right? Like, and over the coming slides, we'll understand how this timing and how how as we are growing, all of this changes, right? So initially, you would have very, very simple questions, right? How many users we have, how many users are coming in day in and day out, where the call might be happening, and just that, right? Like you have just started, and it's just 6 months. You are trying to understand that if there is a product market fit, are we growing day in and day out? And Google Analytics can solve all of these issues. You don't need to get into the whole data warehouse and data lake thought process. You can just have a simple database to just store the data. And there are a lot of tools which on the fly you can use, like Firebase and all, to just start off, right? Just start off. And then once you start to get towards the product market fit, that's where the things start to get complex, right? Like now the questions have, they have changed to what behavior in a user, what behavior at your users in the first day indicate they are likely to sign up for a paid plan, or what patterns or conditions lead to an increase or decrease in purchase and usage of your product. So what products should we cross-sell and upsell? All of these questions, it will come up in front of you, and you would, if you are not thinking about this analytics and knowing your users best, it will become really, really difficult for you to answer these questions, right? So let's divide the stages and let's talk about the tools which we might need. So first of all, in terms of the starter page, right? So now the starter page, I was talking about 6 months to 1 year, right? Like that's when you can do away with Google Analytics, Facebook, Pixel, Firebase, or even Mixpanel or Amplitude. I would suggest not to go for Mixpanel or Amplitude yet, because I think if you're growing significantly, you can start moving towards that, right? It also depends on the number of users. It's not just the age, it's also how you're growing, right? If you have gotten a product market fit in the initial 3 months itself, now you would want to have Mixpanel and Amplitude kind of tools. And I would definitely love to deep dive into one of these tools and show you how these work. And that's exactly the plan over the coming episodes. I would pick up one of these tools and I'll show you how to track this journey and how you can run different experimentations. You can know where the users are dropping off, what is happening, what is exactly happening. So now once you have, so let's now talk about once you have the product market fit, right? Like then the tools are Mixpanel, Amplitude, Kissmetrics, and these are especially well suited as event tracking tools. Now, once you have this product market fit, right? So you have to start integrating these tools for complex analytics. Now, when you are getting more granular and want a deeper understanding of, say, what your funnel conversion looks like from homepage to the inverse of your product, or you want to expand to a full analysis, a full funnel analysis, that is where these tools of Amplitude, Mixpanel, and Kissmetrics comes in. And now, as you are using these tools, you would be able to know, okay, this is what is happening. But there are a lot of other things that can happen at this point of time. Let's take an example over here, right? So as you can see these two graphs, right? So now, first of all, and I know this company really well. So what was happening initially, and of course, for reasons I cannot take the name, but what was happening initially, that for initial months, the growth was significant, because that were the months when the startup actually got, it came into the news for all the good reasons, and users started to use it. Now the problem with the startup, as soon as they went away from this limelight, they started to see a significant drop in the number of users who are using them. And that's not the only thing, right? Like they were suffering significantly in terms of retention. Now, as you could see in the second graph, like, they got to a particular point of users. If they would have been able to retain those number of users, it would have been a significant growth for them. But the users initially, they came on the platform, but they started to leave. And all these quantitative tools we were talking about till now, right? Those will tell you a story of, yes, this users are dropping off. Yes, there's a kind of a problem which we are facing, which we as a startup are facing, and we should do something about it. But where? What is exactly happening? And now that's where the product managers usually go wrong. What they do is that as soon as they start to see these problems, they start to say, okay, there's something that users don't know. Let's figure out. And they start to send them material or a push notification or mailers, and they try everything out. And no, your retention rate is not going to go up, or it's not going to go up because you start to spam them, right? Like that's not how it works. You have to identify what is not working. Now that's where the qualitative analysis comes in. And qualitative, the difference between quantitative and qualitative is both the number and really knowing what is happening. But qualitative analysis is something which I really believe that the initial stages, when you are actually talking to the customer, that's the best way to know how and why your customers are using you and stuff. But as you grow, it's very difficult in terms of geographies and others, right? Like it's very difficult to really know that what is ticking off with your customer and what is not ticking off with your customer. So that's exactly where tools, multiple tools comes in, and we will talk about that, right? So my point over here is that numbers are not enough to tell the complete story. You would need to, at the end of the day, know that where the dropout is happening. Let's take another example, right? Like, so now there are two types of users that this company is having. So there are all sets of users, and again, this is an example from one of other companies which I came across, and there was an example of this, and I thought it would be perfect to pick it up here. So what was happening is that their customer base was actually going down, and there was a significant drop. But they actually, in terms of retention, there were users who were sticking to the app and they were using the app multiple times. But they couldn't figure out, and this was one of the meditation apps, right? Like they what they saw is that the customers who were able to use the app 3 to 4 times, they were actually paying for, they were taking up the paid plan and they were actually regularly using it and stuff. But for a product manager to identify what was going wrong for the users who were just leaving the platform, it became really difficult for them. And there were a number of matrices which they tried to track, and there were a number of ways which they tried to track. And finally, and you would be surprised that the issue which they found out from the qualitative analysis is that the users who are able to set an alarm for their next meditation session, they were regular on the app. They were coming on the app. They were interacting. They were actually interacting with the app and also were attending these sessions. But the users who were not putting these alarms, they were not able to actually. They were actually dropping off, and that's where the retention was. That's where they were losing the customers. So what they decided to do? Okay, let's send reminders to the customer whenever their next session is, and that brought up their retention rate significantly, and that's how they solved the problem out. And that's where, and that's how significant the qualitative analysis is over the quantitative analysis. And I'm not saying that you choose one over the other. You have to have both, but you need to have a control over both the things. You should know that both the things are happening, and you should have control on both the things. Now, there are multiple tools, and my favorite is Ola, which allows you to actually interact with the customer and also see the customer journey, right? And I'm not sure how initially when you start to see that the traction is happening, you should get these chat options to make your customer's life easy, and also for yourself to understand your customer journey. And Ola does the best job in this. There are other tools like live chat, intercom, and you can actually talk and see what your customers are doing. You can also video record and do a multiple bunch of things and diagnosis over what is happening, and full story are the top choices for that. And then once this is done and you are again growing, the growth continues, and then you need to have this drip email kind of a setup where you are continuously telling your users, okay, this is what, inviting them to the events, or maybe sending them product updates and whatnot. Now, there comes a point when you have got a sense that where there is a leak in the funnel, right? Such as people are signing up, but they aren't activating. So that's where the whole story of the qualitative or quantitative works off. Now, in the end, the last point over in this whole analytics tool part is that once you are invested in your paid marketing tool and you are getting a significant traction out of those, I would suggest that for this marketing marketing tool attribution, you go ahead with Converto or Kochava or for your mobile if that suits you. So these were some of the suggestions which I had, and let's move to the next part. And the next part, I would like to talk about that how to go on to do vendor selection. Right now, I'm sure that many of you who are listening to this and who will listen to this, you would know that what kind of tool will your counterparts might be using. So you are a product manager at one of the startup, and there's your friend who is working with another startup. They just say, Amplitude is working fine for me. Just go ahead with that tool, and it will solve all your problems. And you would actually kind of do some public domain search, and you would go to the Google, find out what is the best tool and stuff, and whatever the SEO is working for these tools, and you will read a couple of articles and you just go for it. That's the first mistake which you might make in terms of choosing a vendor. So I suggest that for what has worked for me in the long term, there are two things. And before you go on to decide on a tool via public search, you should go on to do these two things. So first, the two way to go for it, right? The first thing which has worked for me, right? There are a number of tools. Let's say you have decided on a couple of tools, like 2, 3 tools right now, okay? And you want to now test these tools on the actual data, because that's the second stage, right? You want to actually talk to the vendor you have decided on, and then actually run through the data, and then finally decide, okay, I'm going to go with this tool. But there's a significant challenge there. If you are going to get into this exercise, and trust me, people are waiting to get this tool integrated. Your marketing team is dependent on you. Your product team is dependent on you to get this going, to get the insights, and the executive team is asking you what is going on, how many customers, and whatnot. Like you have to give this analysis soon. And now once you get into all of this vendor exercise of choosing tool, and if that didn't work for you, it would be a significant problem, because you are anyway running behind, and the time is running, right? Like, and in startups, you want to do things quickly. So that's where the tools like Segment comes in, right? Once you have the tools, and I would say just decide on 2, 3 tools, and after you have set up, that these are the tools I'm going to check with. So you connect those tools with Segment, and now once you have done your setup, so for your tracking, you can just flip the switches, having it to flowing through various tools. So now that will let you to easily juxtapose between the tools. And whether you use Segment or not, find a way to lower the bar for seeing your data motion through a tool, right? You have to see your data in motion. You have to see the results coming out. And Segment does solve that problem in a very, very significant way, where you are doubtful between 2 tools. Just connect both of them, see your data in motion, and see which one is really working for you. And there are other tools which are available in the market. The one I have used is Segment, so I'm just suggesting that one. The second important point, and that's again a very, very crucial point, because when you are actually working with the vendors, right, and when you are talking to them, and when you are actually going through this exercise of testing, you would see the kind of support you are going to get from these tools, right? Like, and the vendors, right? Because that's really important, because you are in it for a long term. That's not a tool which you're going to use today and you are going to build up a tool tomorrow. That's not going to happen, right? You have to go for a longer term. So it's really, really important that the kind of service and the kind of support they are providing, that is paramount. And you should definitely decide on that particular factor. So now there's one more point. There's one more point which I really go after, and that is that whenever I'm talking to the vendors, I clearly state my goal. So what is my goal? Like, for example, my goal is, from the analytics tool, is to get the product team to have a complete picture of the activation funnel, right? Now that's my goal. And in this case, I'll define my 60, 80, and 100% of the complete picture of the customer. Might look like at various stages of the success of that tool, right? So now what you have to do after you have set up your hypothesis, you test it with your data, and at the end of 2 weeks, declare whether it has hit the mark. And this setup will help you to find the clear winner. And this you can, of course, do with Segment, or if you are going with just one vendor, that is also possible, and you can actually do this hypothesis testing, and you can come out as a winner. So I would suggest that you think about these things whenever you are going for a vendor selection, because it really becomes crucial. Now the next part, right? Till now, we were talking about, and we were talking about a lot how once your company gets to the product market fit, right? What are the things that you have to do, and what are the tools you have to select, right? Now you have crossed that market, that stage, right? Now you are a company of, let's say, 50+ people, and you are growing significantly. There are multiple teams, and they all need data. There are multiple tools which they're using. Somebody is using Salesforce, HubSpot, and all of these, and Google Analytics and what all, right? Like whatnot. So now all of these tools, they what they do is they create their silos, right? And the data silos, as they start to happen, that's where you have to jump in. And and if you are a data product manager, you would, and if you really understand data, that I think it would be very, very clear to you that we are starting to face this problem and we should resolve it. So the reality is that even with data, and I read it, like I think it was a Gartner research or something where they have said that even with all the kind of data the companies are getting, they are unable to derive meaningful business insights from their analysis. Have you thought what can be the reason for this? There can be a bunch of reasons, I think the very important reason, and very few companies actually correctly combine the disparate sources of data from marketing, sales, product, and various teams, which I was talking about just, right? So you have to stop this thing where the data silos which have started to begin within the company that are not happening for a longer time. You have to solve for that problem, right? Because this makes it very, very challenging for the organization to access all the data they need for the complex decision. And by gathering all your data at a single point and a single location, you will be able to build efficient analytics on large and high quality data sets, right? Like you would have, so there are various ways, and we are just going to deep dive on that, right? Which one you have to select. And if you're looking beyond the funnel or beyond the business funnel or the customer funnel, you need to start looking at where you are going to store the data. And now that's where we are going. So of course, we already have a database where we are storing the data, customer information, user data, and that can be SQL, NoSQL, depending on what kind of data you are receiving, right? And we are going to deep dive in the next few slides on what to pick up from and what stage, and the stage you are in and what to pick up according to your stage. And I think there is no single answer. And as you grow, you can actually decide to combine database, data warehouse, data lake, and all of those things to make the analytics, the data storage, all of the seamless. So the end of the day, you have to make sure that whatever you are doing, you are creating a single view of the customer, and that's really, really important. That should be your goal. That should be your aim. And let's find out what's the best way to go for it, right? So now talking about the data warehouse and data lake, right? Data warehouses often have essential uses, but their applications are narrower due to their rigid structure because they require careful planning of data. And when I say that careful planning of data, of course, there is a schema definition which you have to give when you are forming a data warehouse. But in case of data lake, that's not true, right? Like you can have a data lake and you can start to dump your data in. And on the other part, and which is another crucial part, data warehouse can handle structured and semi-structured data, and data lake can cover all your needs, which is structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Now, depending on the type of data you're receiving, that's another thing which you have to think through, right? Now, if I have to say that, okay, now you might be thinking, and we will deep dive into the differences more in the next slide, but you might start to think after a while that, okay, data lake is the best way to go forward. But the solution is completely different, and you would know about the bigger companies. They're using all the components, and because their uses are really, really different. So hence, I would say that really just try to understand the differences, but at the end of the day, they have to go hand in hand. The data lake and data warehouse, they go hand in hand. Data lakes are complementary to data warehouses. If data is queried more frequently, and there is a need for speed to fetch the data and the analytics part, data warehouse is your go-to option. So let's move to the next slide and understand the differences more, right? So of course, I just made this point that data warehouse is something which data lake can be a source to, like data, you dump all your data in data lake, and data warehouse gets all the data from coming in from the data source, which is your data lake in this case. Apart from that, while organizations want to analyze their data from multiple sources, they may choose to complement their database with a data warehouse or a data lake, or both. When determining if a data lake or a data warehouse is right for your organization, I think you have to consider 2-3 things. First, which I said, a couple of minutes back, that you have to identify that your data is structured, semi-structured, or unstructured, because data warehouse does not support unstructured data, and the best way to go forward then for you is data lake itself, and that that summarizes everything. That if you have unstructured data, and which is like audio files, video files, and all of that, then data lake is the best way to go forward. Now, the next thing which you have to answer the question to is, will my analysis benefit from having a predefined fixed schema? And now that again is a question which you have to think, right? Because you have to define a schema. And when I say schema, there is a structure. Schema is just a structure that this is how I'm going to store the data. You cannot change the structure, a predefined structure or a schema, which in the data warehouse case we have to do. And that makes it easier and that makes it quicker, right? So there is a trade-off between what you are trying to get out of. So whenever you are thinking about this, you just need to think about that. What's your use case? And that's how you will be able to define, right? Like in the case of database also, you have to define that I'm going to use MySQL or NoSQL or columnar data or graph database. So there are multiple databases, but you really understand that which type of database you need, right? If it's a user level data, you will of course go for MySQL. And then let's say if you are an e-commerce site and you have or let's say let's take a simple example, right? TikTok. So for TikTok, the video metadata, or let's start with the user data, right? The user data will get stored in a database, and the metadata for a video which you are uploading, that will get stored in NoSQL, and that's because the fetching and the structure which the data is coming in can be different in different cases, because the file type may differ, and you might even want to fetch that particular data quickly, and that's where the NoSQL comes in. And then if you're storing the video itself, then of course data lake is your go-to option. So you understand that how and when to use, and this all of this depends on the use case which you're going for, right? So that is really, really crucial. And I have had the screen in front of you for a longer time, but another crucial point which differentiate data lake to enterprise data warehouse is the kind of users who are going to use it, right? You can write an SQL query and can get data quickly out of a data warehouse, but in case of data lake, no, that is not possible. And if you're thinking that, okay, I can dump all my data into a data lake and I can quickly fetch that data without doing an ETL or maybe predefined schema or all of those things. But if you want your analysis to be quicker and real time, you would have to do a bunch of stuff in enterprise data warehouse. In data lake also, because the data is not in structured format, and it would definitely take time for your tool to actually fetch the data out of data lake. And it's a whole topic altogether in itself. And I would definitely deep dive in the coming session into how this works at the end of the day. And there are a bunch of other differences, but I think I have made it very, very clear for you. So let's identify and let's figure out how your how the journey looks like in this particular case, and what all we have talked about, right? Now, in terms of, there is a lot of data coming in from various sources, let's say mobile app, web app, and all of those things. So the first thing which you have to think about the data type and the quantity of data which you are going to receive. That's where it will help you to decide what kind of data warehouse you would need, and what And also the type of database or type of data which you are receiving also makes that call at the end of the day. The scale and the cost which will play a significant role in you deciding that which data warehouse tool or in terms of data lake. I think we have a much clearer picture with most of the people who I have and most of the companies I have seen and I have talked to. They use Amazon S3 because they have made it so easier, and there are so many tools which are supporting that whole ecosystem that it has become really, really easy to do a bunch of stuff over that. But in terms of data warehouse, if you're thinking about a data warehouse to be picked up from, I think Snowflake does the best job there because it has, it has decoupled the architecture that allows the computing and storage to scale separately. And that plays a significant role in its pricing also, because the pricing, how Snowflake's pricing works is that you can, it is dependent on the volume of data and the compute time you are using. So unless and until you are using it, and unless and until there is a lot of, there is a usage or the compute time is coming in, you won't have to pay for that. So it makes it very easy for you. And of course, each and every company is going towards that. But another thing that Snowflake does for you, that you can choose any cloud vendor. You can go with Google, you can go with AWS, you can go with Azure. So it completely depends on you if you're using Snowflake. So it makes it easier for you. Now, there are performance and maintenance stuff, which again, you can decide which vendor to go for. Now, coming to the data pipeline part, right? Like, you have to have, now either you are using a data lake or a data warehouse, you have to get data pipeline sorted, right? Like how you are letting the data flow to your data warehouse and outside of data warehouse to your BI tool, which you are using over and above that. So now the first thing which is really, really crucial, and which we, whenever we talk about crucial data for us, the user stream data, right? Like the event stream, where we get to know that how the user is using, and we of course want to track all of this data, right? So when you want to track this data, so the marketing team wants this data in Google Analytics to track conversions around ad spending and some other campaigns. And meanwhile, the product team, who is using Amplitude by now, want to track user journeys and user flow. So what will happen in this case is there will be multiple SDKs from these two different tools, which will be fetching data from your website or from whichever source the data is coming from. And then it would be sending back the data to the data warehouse, or if you would want to again fetch it, the data from these tools. But imagine the overhead which happens if there are 5 such tools and there are multiple different tools which are being used. So again, that's where data warehouse plays a good role. And there are multiple tools which can help you to get this problem sorted out, right? And then there are non-user events, which are tracked in your Salesforce kind of tools and Zendesk. That again, you have to move to your data warehouse. So that's the second kind of data which you have to move to data warehouse. And then the third, from data warehouse, how you will move your data to your BI tools, right? So now when you are doing, so now you understand that what kind of data you need to move to the data warehouse and how you will be moving it. The third part, which becomes really crucial, is the data modeling part, right? Like you have to make it quick for the analytics to actually give out the results. So you have to create data models, and dbt is one tool which makes it very, very easy for you to form these data models. And data models, if you have to simply understand, it's just that if you have, let's say, if you have a data regarding a particular department, right, just segregate the data as per the department. Let's say supplies, inventory. There is another department, marketing department, which needs the data. So you will segregate the data. You will define the schemas for all of these, and then the whole that particular data can easily be fetched by the BI tools from the data warehouse. So that data modeling needs to happen, where you will define the schemas and the data fetching will happen and will solve the use case for you. But when you are choosing a data modeling tool, it's important to go with one that allows you to model your data right within the data warehouse instead of exporting it to a different tool. That's an important thing which you have to remember whenever you are setting these things up. Now, the next thing is very, very simple. You would all know it. The data warehouse, once you have set up this whole the data warehouse or the data lake, the next thing is to send the data to your BI tool. And of course, there is another data modeling tool, which is LookML, which works with Looker, and it makes it very, very seamless. So there are a bunch of visualization tools. If you're using S3, you have Amazon Redshift, which is a data warehouse. You have a visualization tool from the Amazon, which we are going to talk about in the next slide. And then once you have done all of this analytics, and now you want to expand this stack to actually support the machine learning and all of those kind of stuff, where you would want to get more insights and you would want to actually train your models and stuff on the data which is coming in. There are multiple tools which you can use over there. So if you're using BigQuery data warehouse, which is provided by Azure, you can use BigQuery ML, which has all the tools provided to it. Again, Amazon has its own SageMakers and a bunch of tools which can help you to do this kind of stuff. And then there is Continual and other tools which are available. So let's take an example over here, right? And let's talk about Amazon itself. So Amazon has a bunch of data coming in day in and day out, right? Like they have petabytes of data, they have so many analytics jobs. And are they able to do all of this with one tool, or just the data lake, or just the warehouse, or just the databases? No. So they are working. They have all these tools working in tandem to make sure that all these analytics jobs, which they are running, 6 lakh analytics jobs which they are running seamlessly, and to get the data to the right stakeholders which needed. So if you see that the kind of challenge they were facing, right, needed to analyze data to find insights, identify opportunities, and evaluate business processes. So that's all, that's what we all need, right, at the end of the day. So that's what, as a product manager or as an executive, we are trying to solve in the organization. So they were using Oracle data warehouse, which did not scale, so they were facing problem and it was costly and stuff. So what they did was they deployed a data lake with Amazon S3, which you are talking about. They run analytics on Amazon Redshift. So it's very important to understand over here, right? We were trying to see the differences between data lake and data warehouse. But when you have, and I told you these 2 points, right? When there is a frequent need to read the data, and then there is another thing, which is the need for speed for the analytics. Like you need real-time data coming in. You need to see that how many, there's a big sale day which is happening, and you want to see how many sales they are done and stuff. So you need Redshift or the data warehouse to sit on top of it and make sure that the analytics is seamless. And they have a bunch of other tools, Amazon EMR, Spectrum, to support all of these kind of things. And there are a bunch of other tools, the crawler, which makes sure they have a crawler which makes sure that within the data lake itself, they make sure that there is some kind of schema which so that the data fetching from data lake itself becomes easier. So as you can see, all of this completely depends on the stage you are in. So just a couple of things I would like to throw a light on. You have to see the stage you are in and what can fulfill your use case. That's first of all, and that's how you should start to think of, like, this is my use case, this is the problem I'm trying to solve, this is my hypothesis, this is how this is what I need to prove my hypothesis right or wrong, whatever is required. And then you go on to solve that problem by picking up tools. And we just talked about vendor selection. You can go, you can go back, and there will be a recording which will be uploaded. You can see how this whole vendor selection thing goes on, right? Like that's another key stage which you have to go through, and it would be really helpful. And once you have defined all of this, you should also keep seeing the challenges which your team might start to face. And when the team is starting to face some kind of a challenge, right? Like you would get to know that, okay, this is the challenge which the team is facing. So start to look into that challenge immediately, because it's gonna just become more complicated over the time. So as a product manager, I think, and even if you are an executive and even if you are in a strategy department, the thing that you are trying to do is to solve the problems. And when you are looking to solve those problems, just don't go ahead for a solution, right? Try to understand the problem better. Try to understand who all are facing this problem. Talk to them, do the user interviews. Because if you are in a B2B setup, your stakeholders become internal people, and I understand that role is not just yours. Those internal people have to be very, very fluent in the conversation, and the communication have to flow throughout, and there should be an effective communication throughout in the organization, because we are working for the organization growth, right? Like we should keep our motives separately, and we should focus on the company's growth. So when you think like this, and when you approach a problem, and you try to figure out why the problem is happening, what are the key things, that's when you would understand and you will get the clear picture. And there are a bunch of tools which you can use to understand the problem better. And once you have understood the problem better, and then start to go look for a solution. And once you have found out your solution, then it is really important that you have a metric to track on. You should understand that this is the metric I'm tracking, and then you have to follow that metric and see that, okay, this is how we are back to this number or these number of users. We have solved this problem. Users are loving the product. There were a bunch of dropouts which were happening. Now those dropouts are not happening, and all of that. So there can be a bunch of things which can happen, and all of this has to also align with the business objectives and a couple of things. But yeah, that's the key thing which you have to think through whenever you are going to decide on what next. In this context, in the context we are talking about, your analytics needs, again, you have to go step by step, where you have to understand the problem state you're in, what are the use cases you are trying to solve for, talk to a bunch of people, use the right set of tools to solve those problems, and then track some matrices regarding to these problems which you are facing, and yeah, that you are done. That's how you solve the problem, and you move on to the next problem. Okay, so now that we have understood that yes, this is what we are going to go for, and this is what the problem we are facing. This is the solution for this particular problem. What should we do about it? And all of that is sorted. You have chosen a vendor. You are good to go to the next step. So now the next thing is understanding how successful your tool has been for you, right? So now first, right, the cost of the tool or the product which you are going to use to solve the problem. So now the sticker price or the price that you are going to pay for the tool, that is not enough, right? Like that's not giving you the clear picture. There are a bunch of other things, and those other things are the time your team is spending, right? And if I have to pick an example there, let's say we use MailChimp, right? And MailChimp is something which solves our problem of sending mailers one by one. Just think of it, right? Like if you would have not used MailChimp and you would have been sending your email one by one, how much time your team would spend and how many people you would need to do that. Now that, apart from the cost you are paying to MailChimp for, maybe or another tool which you are paying a subscription for, you should think how much time you would spend if you are not going to buy that tool. That will make your decisioning easier. And apart from that, there's also an opportunity cost. You might miss out on a bunch of customers if you're not going to use the tool. And so all of this combined gives you a real picture of the cost. So that's again, whenever you are strategizing that, this is what you are going to go forward with, this actual thing plays a bigger role there. So your expectation for each of these tool categories is that they're instrumented with your data, deliver insights that change how you make decisions. That could be making choices faster in an informed way, and how collaboratively with your team or customers you were able to work using these tools. If you have a tool running in the background and you have never used that tool, then it's not a valuable tool, right? Like if you have to take an example of Google, Analytics, so the success of Google Analytics is it able to tell you how much traffic you're getting, right? Like which parts of your product or landing page is resonating with your customers? Is the CTA actually working? Is the button rightly placed? If and once you move on to the next set of tools, is the tool helping you to do all those kind of experimentations which you would like to do to release the product, right? That's again a significant thing, because you, as a human brain, we might have a couple of choices, right? And if you want to do these experimentation, it is really important that the tools which we are using and which are helping us to actually analyze our customers actually are working and actually are telling or are actually helping us and actually are telling the complete story of how the user is interacting with the tool or with your website or with your app, right? Now that's where the experimentation is important, and you have to make sure that the tool which you are using allows you to do those experimentations. So your use cases, the problem which you are trying to solve, the tool should solve that problem and should not sit in the background and do some kind of bunch of stuff. That is not going to solve your issue. So your tool success is when your use case or your hypothesis is solved for. So that will make it very, very, very clear for how is your tool successful, is your tool successful for you. And then the next stage, which is the growth stage, where we talked about go with data warehouse, data lake, or both the if your current use cases can be solved with the data lake itself. So again, all of this depends on a bunch of criteria, and I'm sure the kind of use cases which we have discussed in previously can help you solve these issues out. But at the end of the day, they should support your needs. And the decisioning should be concrete. You should be able to extract the next step on how to improve your user process, right? Like all the process or the customer journey map. So when you're thinking about the customer journey map, right? Like how the customer will hop into the next screen where your CTA should be. Is the customer able to see this, see a particular button properly or not? So all of these, the quantitative and qualitative tools you're using, they should help you to move on to the next process and can help you to, and should help you to actually make that decision. That's where the success story is, and that's how you will be successful at the end of the day. At the end of the day, as a PM, ask yourself how you would scale your qualitative tools from 1 to 10 if you were able to see, talk, understand your customer journey in a clear way. Then you would scale it at 9, and that's why I said I have used Olak and I would give it 9 out of 10. And again, by remove that one point, we might have to dive deeper on how to use Olak to understand really that, and I would be covering that in the next session, in the upcoming session. So how easy it is to learn about customers and what they need. So that's again, we talked about it, right? Like your use cases should be satisfied. That's the winning criteria for these tools which you're using. Drip email, of course, the conversions are important. How easy it is to set up a template, how easy it is to send a mail, how easy it is to upload a list of customers, and a bunch of other things, right? And then at the end of the day, the last paid acquisition tools which we were talking about, the ROI is important, how much you have invested in the product, and are you able to get those conversions done through the paid marketing tools whichever you have. So I hope we did cover a bunch of stuff. And if your company is just starting out, a single analytics tool like Google Analytics will suffice your use case. And then if you're 6 months or a year old and you have reached that product market fit, and you are receiving a lot of customers, you are actually getting a lot of customers and traction in the market, then you start to use Amplitude, Mixpanel, and those kind of tools, which can help you to get right answers. Go on to make a balance between qualitative and quantitative tools. That's again a crucial point, how to select the vendors, and what are the key points which you have to look for in the vendors when you're selecting these vendors. Choose a data warehouse or a data lake, which kind of a database which you have to choose. So we did throw a light on all of this. I just wanted to do this session to give you a gist of what all things you have to consider while you are actually building on it, right? There are a bunch of questions and there are a bunch of answers which you have to get before you finally go on to your next set of journey. And the hard work which you are putting in choosing a tool, there should be a guided thought process around it. I learned it through so I went through multiple bunch of articles, bunch of videos to actually understand, and there were times when I made wrong decisions, right decisions and stuff. So I thought that I'll put all of that learning together and share it with you. And of course, and all these 16, 17 slides which we talked about, there can be so much we can talk about these, right? So we can pick up each one component and can deep dive in this. And if you like me to deep dive, and of course reach out to me, DM me that which topic you would like me to deep dive on, and which tool to pick up. I would also try to bring in an expert from that particular. If you really like a tool and you would like to know about that tool, and Amplitude is one thing which I really like, I would try to bring in some expert from the Amplitude company itself. And tell you about how the journey looked like, and we'll pick up a case study and solve that out. But if there is anything specific which you would like me to cover in the upcoming session, or bring in an expert from a particular industry, or pick up a use case, do DM me, to leave me a comment on this post, reach out to me. Would love to get your support on what I'm doing. And yeah, thank you so much for attending this live session. We have a YouTube channel. You can connect with me to get updated about these sessions. And also I will leave out a Google form on this post whenever this post go live. You can fill out the form, and I can send out, and I promise I wouldn't spam, but whenever the next session is happening, I would make sure that you are getting an invite on your calendar. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you really liked this session, and hope it was helpful, and have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.